we are a couple pages in a standard history textbook that our kids read, that they consume. They're still reading the same things that I read when I was a kid. They're still probably reading the same things that, like my parents were. I mean, one of my books actually was for my parents because we're from a really poor county. But like, in any case, like, there's just so little knowledge to the general public about Native people. And then you've got the Washington football team or the Chiefs or the Braves or the Blackhawks or whatever it is. And that's it, or the Halloween costumes you see in Target around this time of the year, right? Like, this is a pretty rough time of the year. Or the little kids that are getting taught to dress up as pilgrims and Indians by their teachers and make like little construction paper headdresses. We did that as kids. Like, I hated being in like a border town growing up with that feeling. It was like shameful. It's like this deeply shameful othering experience for the Native kids that are in those situations. But then it's also this deeply stereotyped, ignorant kind of experience for people who are non-Native, right? They're adopting all these stereotypes. They're adopting these like really narrow racial, I guess, assignments to different people. And there's all kinds of, social science and psychology and like all of that have like shown that this is very harmful to our children, that Native mascots in particular are very, very damaging. They're not just damaging to our kids, they're damaging to all kids, because then kids are learning about racial stereotypes and treating other people as certain representations, right? Like, if you're only seeing, a big plastic drum at a Chiefs rally, and hearing the tomahawk chop and seeing thousands and thousands of people doing this mocked imagery of Native culture, and that's it, along with those couple pages, like, you're going to look at someone and say, like, I can't believe you guys are still here. Like, that it makes sense. Like, that's what happens when people don't have representation. And then, you take that into like an actual people, an existing people. What are you going to do with those people if you don't have any idea who they are?
W.E.B. Du Bois talks about the veil. And for those of us of color, through our lived experiences, see the obvious day-to-day racism and discrimination. And for those on the other side, and largely policymakers, as you reference in the work on the Hill, these are all people who cannot see the obviousness of racism and inequities because they're blind to it. And it's ultimately the kind of mentality that's perpetuated by those who control education for the maintenance of the kind of doctrines and principles of manifest destiny that continue today, the colonialist mentality that continues today. But it is the ultimate ignorance of mainstream society who act out in the most stupid ways that ignorance. So when we talk about cultural competence in this kind of work, it's not a one-way street. It's not about us. It's about them and how they become culturally competent to interact with people indigenous to this place. That is a fundamental disconnect, especially for policymakers at all levels.
I have a first grade age daughter, and we're doing remote learning. And one of the things that I learned growing up in the Dakotas, I attended both schools on the reservation and off, but my family was very active in our education. And I remember that I would have to bring my history books home, and my grandmother would mark them up and, say, these are all the wrong things that they're teaching you. And it would be this really active conversation about when are you going to cover these things, because she will not be attending that day. So, I've taken the same page from what my grandmother and mother did, and I began having these conversations. And, this is, as Tara mentioned, this is a difficult time because we have, Indigenous Peoples Day conversations, and then it's Thanksgiving. And so when my daughter entered kindergarten last year, I started having these conversations with our little suburban school in the Jeffco school district. And I would just go in and say, what are your plans around these two topic areas? Because I have some thoughts about it. It went okay last year. and it went pretty good this year. And then, so then I say okay, because then they don't talk about anything. They don't bring up Columbus. They don't do any Pilgrim and Indian. And then this year, today, my daughter's first grade teacher, it did their morning introduction. She said, today's Indigenous Peoples Day. And I have to say, I was shook, and, I'm happily surprised, but that my reaction is like surprise and shock is, I think telling that we have this expectation that it's going to be either nothing, I think we were getting to like nothing at all. I'm like, okay, I can deal with nothing at all, but that there's not going to be this active discussion of the Indigenous people's lens of history. So the fact that happened in a first grade classroom was something that I feel like these are this is why representation matters. These are why the larger conversations that are happening about national mascots, and then the conversations around Indigenous Peoples Day, because it all has this ripple effect into the classroom. And so today, these 12 other kids who are doing remote learning, got to hear the words Indigenous Peoples Day. And, I felt really proud and happy about that. So anyway, I just wanted to share.